everybody comes out of their offices and she's like, I've got Avila. He's been shot. I've got Agent Avila. He's been shot.
I questioned the assignment. There was a lot of activity by the Zetas cartel. 300 murders a month. When you hear your boss say that he's not aware of any security issues in Mexico, it's a problem.
And I'm like trying to grab the phone from her. And she's like, he needs help. He needs help. Agent Avila's been shot. Definitely very fortunate. Everything, the trials and tribulations that we went through, I think ultimately we came out stronger, more united, blessed. We try to find the silver linings in everything.
Together, they're just like a powerhouse of a couple. They balance each other out and they set a great example for both me and my brother in so many capacities.
I look up to them a lot. They have to work so hard for what they have now, and I was blessed to have this life.
I'm first generation Mexican American. My parents are both from Mexico. They came to the United States.
I'm a first generation American. My parents came to the United States illegally. Being born in a border town, you have to kind of adopt two identities. I have family in Mexico, have family in the US. A bit of a struggle growing up, having to show both families that I belong on both sides.
When I graduated college, I decided to be a social worker. I became an investigator with Child Protective Services.
Got a degree in criminal justice, and my first exposure to the criminal justice system was as a state parole officer. So I worked for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice at the age of 22, and that's when you talk about being exposed to the criminal world. I would be doing something during the day, and before I knew it, I'm flipping hamburgers at my house in the evening and thinking, what in the world? This existed in my own town. And I felt warping out of one world into another.
We had a great life.
I thought I was going to be a federal probation officer for 20 years. One day I said, I think I want to be a special agent for U.S. Customs. I got hired, and that's when the Department of Homeland Security was created. They combined the U.S. Customs Special Agents and INS Special Agents, Immigration Naturalization Service, INS, and now known as ICE. I was fortunate to be assigned back to the El Paso field office, which was very advantageous to me because I was from there. And so a lot of the work that I did on both sides of the border, I knew the territory.
Knowing that I was able to save children from neglect, from abuse, from emotional abuse, from sexual abuse, and being able to sleep at night was so gratifying. I loved every single minute of it for 6 years, making sure that kids were safe from their loved ones. Somebody has to do it, right? When Sophia was born, I had a very traumatic incident with a parent of a child that I was investigating. And that really led me to part ways from Child Protective Services. I was no longer being impartial or undetached. I mean, I had a human being growing inside of me, and anybody who touched a child, I became this horrible mama bear, and I was coming after them. And as an investigator, you have to be completely undetached and unbiased. So they moved me on to international adoptions. And so I stayed there for a little bit. It wasn't until Sophia turned 3 that I started looking elsewhere. 6 months later, I was hired on as a pharmaceutical rep. I could be a full-time mom as well, and that's what I needed to be.
And worked a lot of narcotics, then went into human smuggling, human trafficking. I then started doing financial investigations.
And he was hand-selected to go to Mexico. Nobody knew that he was working in Mexico because at the time, Ciudad Juarez was one of the most dangerous cities in the world.
About 300 murders were occurring in that city a month. It opened my eyes completely to a more international aspect of our investigations.
It was surreal, just the amount of massacres and and violence that was happening just right across the border from us. And Victor was knee deep in it. He was asked if he wanted to have a position out there permanently.
Sometimes in your life, the stars align for you in your career, and there was an opening, an opportunity to go and work as a permanent U.S. diplomat in Mexico.
It wasn't a difficult decision to make, but I was thinking about our kids. I was thinking about the opportunities that this would open, but I was also thinking about the safety. But Victor was so excited. He was so excited. And I was so excited for him. I'm like, yes, if you're in, I'm in with you.
And before you know it, we're living in Mexico City.
Everybody thought we were crazy. Sophia was 9, Victor Emilio was 4. That's a huge undertaking and a huge transition. Very exciting, but extremely different. Victor had started traveling a lot. I mean, he was busy.
I was known in the office as, they call me Trips, because I traveled a lot, working like I'd never worked in my life before, ever. Calderon had kind of waged the war on the cartels, a lot of activity in Mexico against the cartels, and so a lot of violence. And I worked throughout, Central America, Mexico, and the United States. I was in charge of the Global Trafficking in Persons Initiative, taking down human traffickers.
Business as usual at home with my kids. They had no idea what their dad was doing.
I'm working all the time. Claudia eventually starts working at the U.S. Embassy as a background investigator.
I got a top security clearance, kinda took me back to my investigator days with Child Protective Services.
It was a struggle for me because I loved my job. I enjoyed it so much, and I disliked what it was doing to my family and the neglect. The balance wasn't there. What I always was able to do in my career, I wasn't able to do it in Mexico. In Mexico, the job consumed me. That was always a struggle with the family, and missing birthdays and missing parties and missing all this personal time. And even when I was at home, I was working. Claudia understood that. She understood that very well and was very supportive. Every time we had a little bit of time off, even on a weekend, she'd plan something for us to do.
We were enjoying our stay in Mexico. Was I naive? No. I mean, I knew it was dangerous. I knew that there was always risk. Did I feel safe? Yes.
My whole intention was to be at the office that week. But around noon, I get a heads up from one of my coworkers saying, hey, they're gonna send you to Monterrey. And I was livid. What do you mean? What are you talking about? I just got here. There's other agents.
Victor had been away for at least a week. He was arriving that Monday on Valentine's Day. And I said, great. I'm going to make reservations at our favorite sushi restaurant. Like, I need a date night with him, and it's, a special day. And so made all these arrangements. He touches down and then goes to work.
Supervisor calls me in and gives me the official assignment saying, I need you and the Special Agent Jaime Zapata, who had just arrived in the country the week before, working a big arms trafficking case. You're gonna go to Monterrey and pick up this equipment.
I get a call, and he tells me, I'm sure you've got something going on for today, but I'm sorry, Claudia, something came up, and it looks like I'm gonna be heading out. Heading out where? You just got here. You told me you were gonna be here. And he's like, well, we'll talk about it when I get home. And I said, well, what time are you gonna get home? And he's like, well, no, I'm not gonna make the dinner reservations. All right, well, I mean, it's early enough that we can do something to salvage this, right? I'm the eternal optimist. That's what they call me. I'm like, okay, let's regroup. There's always a solution.
I'd never been privy to any of the briefings, so I questioned the assignment because I knew, my office knew, the U.S. ambassador knew that there was a lot of activity by the Zetas cartel. The ambassador had issued out an alert prohibiting all U.S. personnel from driving on that highway. And so I'm here thinking, what are we doing driving on the road? Begin with, it was like you just go by yourself. We never went by ourselves. We always had either U.S. escorts, other armored vehicles with us, Mexican military or Mexican law enforcement escort us. Out comes the deputy attaché, and we tell them this, and he says that he's not aware of any security issues in Mexico. Now, when you hear your boss say that he's not aware of any security issues in Mexico, you know it's a problem. But then you can't be insubordinate. And at that point, I was ordered to go, and you're gonna take Jaime Zapata with you. So I start making arrangements with the guys from Monterrey. I get on the phone, and I said, well, we'll drive out tomorrow morning. It ruined our Valentine's Day dinner.
I'm gonna call the restaurant, whatever it is that we were gonna order. I'm just gonna pick it up. Victor should be coming in the door maybe around 7, more or less, 7, 8 o'clock. Like, I've got this. When the kids got home from school, I told them, okay, this is a very special date. This is what we're gonna do. I dressed them in black pants and white shirts. And I told them, you're gonna make a menu. And this is the sushi. So make a menu for Daddy, and we're gonna have fun tonight. The kids were super excited. When Victor arrived, he arrived with some flowers. And the first thing he said is like, God, I didn't get you a gift. And I'm like, it's okay, it's okay. Like, we're gonna have an amazing time, don't worry. Sophia never broke character, and she's like, sir, please step this way, sit down. Tries to push in the chair that he's sitting in. I sit down. The table is set. And he's like, what's going on? Victor Emilio comes out. They were our little waiter and little waitress. I mean, they were just in character the whole time. I mean, it was so beautiful. We had such a great time. Had dessert, and then he tells me there's a delivery that needs to be made. I have to go meet some agents from Monterrey, but it's okay. I'm gonna go and come back. I said, Monterrey? And I'm like, are you sure you're supposed to go there? Because, I just read an alert. And I'm like, Victor, this doesn't sound right. And he's like, believe me, I fought it. But when you're told, you're told.
Now it's very stressful in my house. Now Claudia is really questioning the mission here. I didn't want my kids to know that I was going out of town again. And it was early in the morning. Victor was still asleep. I gave him a kiss, and I went to Sophia.
She knows what's going on. Like, you can't put anything past that girl. Because of the way that he was dressed, she knew immediately, like, he was gonna be gone.
And she's like, you're going out of town again. And I lied to her. I said, no, I'm not. My whole intention was to be back that same day. I
kiss him goodbye, and I always give him the bendición, right? In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And he's off. The kids go off to school around 10. I went to the embassy. I had a few appointments. I remember somebody yelling. And I was like, what? What's going on? So like everybody comes out of their offices, and she's like, I've got Avila. He's been shot. I've got Agent Avila. He's been shot. And I run out, and I'm like trying to grab the phone from her. And she's like, he needs help. He needs help. Agent Avila's been shot. 8 of them come out. No one could tell me if he was alive. We have our hands up like this. They shot over 100 rounds.
This is Victor Avila from ICE. We are shot.
God, please don't take him away.
Shot with an AK-47, bleeding profusely.
I knew he was in trouble when he told me he was going to be on that highway.
This is where my panic and my fear sets in. I thought they were going to kill me.
We need to be a complete family. What about my kids?
Agent Zapata shows up. We head out. Jaime and I had a wonderful, it's like I'd met him my whole life. We talked about life. We talked about family. He shared a lot of personal information. This is from someone that he had met the day before. I saw myself a lot in him. And we ended up meeting at kilometer marker 100. They show up. We're driving an armored Suburban that was issued to me. They're in their armored Suburban. And we exchange this equipment. This equipment is boxes of surveillance type of equipment, tracking devices, but they were big. We had to lower the second row seat and the third row seat. I throw the keys to Jaime and said, hey, it's your turn to drive. He had never driven an armored vehicle. This vehicle weighs almost 6 tons. So it accelerates different, it brakes differently. This is a good idea for you to drive because it's an open highway. So he starts off driving. I call our supervisor, give him our location. Within maybe not only 15, 20 minutes, 2 SUVs passed us at a very high rate of speed. The second SUV has a silhouette of a rifle, a long gun, sticking from the seat. And I tell Jaime, yeah, I see it. I said, just let him go. Before you knew it, we were right up on them. They had reduced their speed down to maybe 20, 25 miles an hour. They were crawling. They immediately start blocking us. Their front SUV is stopping while the second SUV is stopping and pushing us to the right. They're doing a rolling roadblock. We realize something's wrong here, and I tell Jaime, try to avoid them. But they reposition themselves, and the second time that they start doing that, the SUV next to us, in other words, next to him as a driver's side, rolls down their window, and they bring out AK-47s, and they're yelling, pull, all this in Spanish, by the way, pull over, stop. And I tell him, don't pull over, but now you're almost crashing their SUV in front that's blocking us. Eventually we come to a complete stop on the right shoulder. One of the SUVs is blocking, the other one is behind us, and 8 of them come out and do like a semicircle. And one of them comes around that's carrying a handgun and opens Jaime's door. Jaime immediately grabs the handle and shuts the door. It kind of surprised all of us because when Jaime placed the Suburban in park, it was programmed to unlock all 4 doors. Now they're yanking on the door handles and they're ordering us to get out, get out, get out. The guy at the driver's side door that had opened the door with a handgun shoots a few rounds at the door, kind of front tire area. Did he just actually shoot at did he just, and he had shot off rounds. It was very chaotic and very loud. And they're all screaming, by the way. We have our hands up like this whole time. And I'm yelling at them at the top of my lungs. We're Americans. We're U.S. Embassy employees. We're U.S. diplomats. This is a diplomatic vehicle. Look at the plates. Whoever you think we are, we're not. You're confusing us for someone else. Over and over, I'm yelling it. Jaime never says a word. 2 of the shooters came to my window. When we locked the doors, we had inadvertently lowered my window a couple of inches, the armored window, and we didn't know. They inserted the barrel of an AK-47 and a handgun right by my head. We had nowhere to go. And so I braced myself against the post like this, and without warning, they just opened fire into the cabin. They shot multiple rounds into the cabin, and I saw Agent Zapata be struck multiple times on his side with a handgun. I grabbed the handgun and burned this whole part of my skin had peeled off because it was very hot, and I don't know if I was trying to grab it or wiggle. I don't know. I remember just grabbing the handgun, and then they pulled them out, and then I raised the window, and they shot over 100 rounds at that Suburban, and I tell Jaime, go, go, go. I even got the shift lever, and I slammed it down, and I pushed his leg on the gas pedal, and we crashed that front SUV that was blocking us. I just wanted to get out of that X and get the SUV back on the highway, but the SUV was destroyed. I mean, the tires were flattened. When we crashed, we just crossed the highway into the median, and I tried to get the steering wheel to put the Suburban back, but it was disabled at that point, and Jaime had become unresponsive at that point. Now I started attending to him. He had gotten shot with an AK-47 round in his leg, and was bleeding profusely from his left leg. Trying to see what's going on, I see one SUV take off. The other SUV takes off and then does a U-turn and comes right back and parks right in front of us. Two of the shooters come out and they stand right in front of me with AK-47s, and they just open fire, trying to penetrate the bulletproof glass. And I remember freezing there and thinking, okay, this is it. And then I see them get in the SUV and take off. I get my radio phone, it doesn't work. It has no signal. I pick up my BlackBerry and make a phone call to the U.S. Embassy. The call gets routed to the regional security office. It happens to be a temporary receptionist.
Yes, embassy, switch office. This is Victor Avila from ICE. We got shot. We got shot.
She kind of panics and literally drops the phone, runs down the hallway. Claudia is literally 5 feet away in an office when she runs down the hallway and says, there's an agent Avila who's been shot. Claudia hears this and comes out in the office and said, what did you just say? That there's an agent Avila. She doesn't know that that's my wife, and there's an agent Avila on the phone, he's been shot. So Claudia goes into distress, almost throwing up. My friend then, sorry.
I can't tell you just how many emotions. I mean, I knew it. I knew he was in trouble when he told me he was going to be on that highway. All I remember is someone pulling me away from the phone because I wanted to talk to Victor. And they said, it's going to be fine. And then Eddie shows up and another RSO show up. And they said, Claudia, he's going to be fine, he's going to be fine. And then I remember Eddie talking to Victor.
We are on the highway to Querétaro, Mexico. We've been shot and attacked on the highway. I am an ICE special agent. Try to remain alive, please.
At first, he doesn't recognize my voice. And I'm like, Eddie, it's me. And for some reason, I'm speaking a lot of Spanish and a lot of explicits. I'm F-bombing here and there. It's just a very, very stressful situation. Well, they're trying to find out where we're at. I was bleeding a lot from my face. I had a lot of shrapnel and glass. I had a lot of Jaime's blood on me and my own blood, and I didn't know. And he says, you gotta check, are you shot? I said, I don't know. I got hit in my chest and twice in my left leg. I didn't know. I didn't feel it. And I said, yes, I am. So he says, take off your belt and cinch it tight to make a tourniquet out of my leg, and I did. They heard me trying to keep Jaime alive because I was still managing with Jaime because he was almost coming in and out of consciousness. The only person in Mexico that I trusted was the head of our VEDA unit. I called him directly in Mexico City, and he was able to deploy a helicopter. We waited for 40 minutes before any help came. That's a long time.
I was so distraught. I was yelling and screaming, trying to get to him over the phone. They called the embassy doctor. They took my pulse, and I mean, it was sky high. They said, you really need to calm down. We're gonna give you something to just make sure that you're okay.
There was at one point an ambulance that came through the right side. It doesn't say ambulance on it, and it doesn't have the colors like the US ambulance, but it's an ambulance. And one individual gets off, crosses over, and is trying to open the doors. I'm here to help you. And when this guy was coming over, I just had my handgun pointed at him. I said, yeah, open the door. Open the door. And he's like, I'm here to help you. I said, yeah, go ahead, open it. I didn't trust anybody at that point. And then he didn't do anything, he left. That's the Zeta cartel ambulance. That's the guy that they sent to rescue their own people or to finish people off. And not until about 40 minutes later, the cavalry shows up and rescues us. The helicopter literally lands there next to us on Highway 57. They take Jaime and I to the nearest hospital in San Luis Potosí. This is where my panic and my fear sets in.
There's so many conversations. That room just became engulfed with so many people. It was very, very surreal. And the only thing I could think of is, God, please don't take him away. Please don't take him away. We need to be a complete family. What about my kids? I think I was in shock. And they took me to an office and they gave me a shot. From there, I remember being able to at least take a breath. But the whole time, no one could tell me if he was alive. The minutes seemed like hours. The supervisor, the attaché at the time, he came in and he said that somebody was en route to get to Victor. And I asked him, is Victor okay? And I remember he looked at another agent. He looked at him instead of looking at me. And he said, yeah, he's gonna be fine. He's gonna be fine.
I refuse any kind of IV. I refuse any kind of medication. I didn't give them my name. I didn't give them information. I thought they were gonna kill me.
I saw a bunch of men in suits.
Well, where's Dad?
Now everything's kind of compromised. There's very little distinction between the police and the bad guys. We are not under arrest, but we're not free to leave.
I didn't know what to tell them.
We have these like hoods put over our heads.
And they put us in the back of this Suburban.
Are our lives in danger? What is happening?
I was so confused. Something's not right here.
How do you tell your kids your dad was gunned down by cartels and they killed his partner?
Agent Zapata's taken to a trauma room. I'm taken to another. My fear sets in. I thought they were gonna kill me. It is the worst feeling I've ever felt in my life. You talk about your faith, you talk about trust, you talk about what do I believe in. It all came to fruition for me at that moment, because during those 40 minutes, I felt so lonely. I'm an American, I'm in a country of my heritage, but I was a foreigner. They thought we were Mexican federal police officers, and I was okay with that. Petrified. It doesn't even come close to describing the fear that I had. It is a very internal evil fear. A doctor then does come a little while, I don't know if it's within an hour, and tells me that Agent Zapata had passed. I asked him to treat him with dignity and respect.
Men in suits is what I remember. And my mom was like super kind of scattered, and I've never really seen her like that. I remember being especially confused because she said, you don't have to do your homework. You just go downstairs and play. And I was like, oh, I don't have to do my homework, okay.
When my kids got home, I didn't know what to tell them.
The shooting happened at 2:15 p.m. and the first Americans showed up about 7:30 p.m. Claudia and the kids are going through their thing because when they showed up to the Suburban, now everything's kind of compromised, right? So they knew my address and home in Mexico City. And in Mexico, there's very little distinction between the police and the bad guys.
The news came on and they said, Agent Jaime Avila has died. They had Jaime's first name and Victor's last name. I mean, I was devastated. I remember them telling me, you know, you can't stay here. But I only got 2 hours to pack. Like, what do I pack? Like, where are we going? My kids, they have no idea. They're curious, they're thinking, what's going on? Why are there so many people here? Jorge comes back and he tells me, there's someone that wants to talk to you. And it's Victor. And he's at the hospital. And he's like, I'm okay, Claudia. I'll be okay. Just know that I'm coming back to you. I said, that's all I needed to know. I'm good. I'm Superwoman. You know what? Whatever's coming next. But I remember going to my room and just bawling. Just bawling because I heard his voice. I knew he was home. But then I thought about Jaime. He's the agent that didn't make it. And even though I didn't know him, he took that sacrifice because it could have very well been my husband who died that day.
When the Mexican police said it was secure, I told them who I was. And I remember saying, I'm Victor Avila. I'm an American. And we're U.S. diplomats from the U.S. Embassy. And you see the reaction from the hospital staff. They knew they had an international incident in their hands. Then the legal system kicked in Mexico. We are not under arrest, but we're not free to leave. All of a sudden, we were detained.
My kids are thinking, what's going on? Where's Daddy? And I said, oh, Daddy's fine. Daddy's fine, but we have to leave. Okay, why are we leaving? Well, and I'm the worst liar.
She said that we had to get out of the apartment because there was a fire hazard.
I saw a bunch of men in suits just like packing up our stuff in a hurry. I was like, what's going on? But my mom wouldn't tell me. I was 6 years old.
We went to a hotel. I remember that being just the longest day of my life. Well, where's Dad? Even at 10 years old, I had some kind of sense that something was off.
I told the kids, your dad has been involved in a car accident, but he's doing well. We're gonna be leaving on an airplane to go meet Daddy. When the time comes that we have to be escorted out, and she's like, Claudia, like, you don't understand, the incident has escalated. And now we're having the government of Mexico escorting us to the airport. Brace yourself.
We have these like hoods put over our heads.
They put us in the back of this Suburban.
Cover my head and they kind of escort me. There was at least 7, if not more, vehicles with armed guards on the back of the trucks, pointing long guns at everything. It was scary. And I remember my kids just, Mama, Mommy, Mommy, Mom.
This is way too much for a fire hazard. Like, this just does not make sense.
The alarms were already blaring, yelling at us, keep your kids down. Armed vehicles next to us, in front of us, and all these soldiers. Everybody's moving and, we're just hauling. What else? What else is going on? What's happening? Are our lives in danger? What is happening?
We are not under arrest, but we're not free to leave. Our government said, no, we gotta go. So DEA lent us their plane, and at 3 a.m, they got me out and got me to Houston.
We get to the airport and there's military all over the place. That's when I was told that it was a cartel hit. And nothing made sense. Out of the corner of my eye, I see an agent, and he just wouldn't stop crying. He made his way over to me. He grabs my hand and he tells me, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry, Claudia, for what you're going through. That should have been me. Later, did it make sense that it should have been him in that vehicle and not Victor.
They loaded us on the back of an airplane, but it was for supplies. The pilot let us take pictures in the cockpit, and we were like, oh, very cool.
As soon as we got off the jet, that's when I saw my dad in a wheelchair.
I looked back at my mom, and she was crying, just full-blown sobbing. And she just ran to my dad, and she hugged him. I was so confused, because I was like, why? Like, what's going on?
I was just overwhelmed when I saw him like that.
Something's not right here. They drove us to my grandparents' house. News trucks pulling up to the house. There were people outside constantly on guard duty. Grandma, I know that my dad also was in the car with another man, another agent, his partner. Is he okay? And she said, he's at home with his family.
This is where, as parents, we went the wrong direction.
How do you tell your kids your dad was gunned down by cartels, and they killed his partner at 11 and 6.
Our instinct is protect. We'll tell them down the line, right? There'll be a time when we'll be able to tell them.
I don't remember crying that much. I was just trying to take in like all the information that was given to me.
You know when your kids are not believing what you're telling them. I had been feeding Victor, Emilio, and Sofia all these lies, and it was a bad call.
Our office counselor who said, is it okay if I talk to your kids? At my parents' house, I said, yes, please do. Well, she talks to him, comes back to us, and says, your kids already know everything. And as a matter of fact, they feel a little left out as to why are you lying to them?
As a mom, was devastated because in trying to protect my kids, I was causing them more harm because they felt completely neglected, completely ousted and ostracized. My poor babies. That was the last thing I wanted for them, but I thought we thought we were doing what was best for them.
Later that day, my parents pulled me and my brother into a bedroom at my grandparents' house, and they told us, your dad was ambushed by a drug cartel. He was shot, but he's still here. His partner died. We're gonna get through this as a family.
I was so shocked. I knew how dangerous my dad's job was, but when I actually saw him in a wheelchair, I was like, wow, like that's real. Like he does real stuff with like real bad guys and stuff. And as a 6-year-old, I was so overwhelmed because I didn't really have exposure to what my dad did every day.
That's kind of, I think, the big turning point for our family. I was very young. My brother was very young. But since then, we've become all just so incredibly close. All of the things that we've been through since then as well has just been enough for several lifetimes, I think.
Because of the shooting, I figured there's got to be things. My kids are part of my life. They live in my own home. They have to be included in certain things. Not everything, not maybe big adult matters, but hey, they have to be included. And it really has brought us together, and it's really given us a very unique bond and trust. Eventually, they said, for officer safety, we don't want you anywhere near the border.
They flew us to DC for Victor to rehab.
It was definitely a learning experience for all of us because living in Mexico and then moving to Spain and only staying there for 2 years until my dad was told to leave and we had to move again to Colorado. I feel like that forced us to get closer, form a really strong bond together.
Being the provider for your family, there was a lot of anxiety because I didn't know what the next step was. I felt a lot of guilt that my family had to be put through all this because of my job.
We argued quite a bit.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stress in the marriage.
A lot of stress.
A lot of stress in the marriage. I gained a lot of weight. I started losing my hair. One day, I just didn't want to go to work. Aren't you going to work?
Couldn't get out of bed.
I fell in a very, very deep depression. And that's when the real PTSD hit. A person as disciplined as I thought I was, like, how can this be happening to me? I couldn't shake it off. I couldn't understand why I didn't have that control. And it hurt me, and it hurt my kids, and it hurt my family. The worst part is that my agency didn't understand that. What's wrong with Victor? The nightmares were horrible. The fear that I felt going to the hospital would come back at night. Sometimes the dreams were not even violent at all. They were evil.
I noticed how his personality traits changed afterwards. With counseling, it did get better. But my goodness, we really had to work at it. Victor and I had never had the amount of disagreements that we did during our 10 years of marriage.
It ended up being okay, but what wasn't okay is that at work, I wasn't going to work.
They ostracized him. They didn't want him back. I think Victor was the last one to realize that his career was done with the agency.
My law enforcement call sign had been erased. My email had been deleted. They sent agents to my house to pick up my guns and my equipment and my car. And I wasn't gonna give them my badge and credentials. It was very stressful because I was on the clock. I was getting paid, but I wasn't going to work. My agency's not offering a position back. So you're never going to be a special agent ever again. Okay, but there could have been a lot of things I could have done for the agency. I could be a speaker for human trafficking, and I could do so many things. But those offers never came. I didn't understand it. They didn't want me back.
He went through an identity crisis. It was Victor the agent, Victor the super agent, Victor the superstar agent, to Victor is no longer an agent. And so that, I think, took a toll on him.
I got shot in line of duty. I paid with blood, sweat, and tears, and I saw my partner die. But they didn't want me back. 2 of the weapons used against us were part of Operation Fast and Furious. I thought it was that. We wanted answers.
I'm running on empty. He's running on empty. Maybe it's time to go home.
Sophia went to 3 different high schools. We wanted Victor to have the stability to go to at least one school from that 8th grade to he graduated. And that's how we ended up here. I wasn't officially being briefed. I checked with my own friends, and not just friends from my agency, but from other law enforcement agencies, and they would tell me, we'll let you know if there's any threat.
It was very disheartening, and it was extremely, I was very afraid. We were afraid.
Had a lot of survivor's guilt. Your partner died, but why didn't you die?
Things seem just so out of control.
Without God, can't make sense out of anything.
They won't have to worry about me. I won't let them down.
The 7 were extradited from Mexico, charged with murder, calls for a mandatory life sentence.
The only reason why he's here is by the grace of God.
I had to call the Zapata family and let them know there's no one in prison for the murder of their son.
We love to grill.
We're big foodie oriented.
My sister loves to bake.
We spend a lot of time together. We still, to this day, have a lot of meals together. Despite our busy schedules, when we can, we will eat together.
I'm 22. I graduated with a degree in communication and public relations and advertising.
She finds the humor in everything.
Sophia is a great sister, and I strive to be like her. I'm so thankful to have her in my life. Without her, especially throughout my whole life, things would have been really different. She's just like a built-in friend. It's the best.
He is one of my best friends. I love him. He is one of the biggest supporters of mine.
Victor Emilio is more serious. He's got an old soul, very noble, athletic.
I've been playing soccer my whole life, and this past season was my last soccer season, so it's been kind of a big change for me.
Very much like me.
I think my dad is the strongest person I've ever known. He's led by example of who I want to be.
He is one of my heroes. He's a wonderful father, and he's also an incredible influence on me and my brother. My mom, so incredibly compassionate. She just lights up every room she walks into.
I wish I could have been more like her. She's never negative about anything. She never gives up.
Open communication and trust and faith is the cornerstone of our family, for sure. You cannot have inner peace without faith. And when there's so much coming at you without God, you really can't make sense out of it, out of anything.
I'm so glad they like to spend time with us. I know how busy their lives are, all the stress they have to go under, and the fact that they make time to have fun with us is the best. We're big football fans, soccer, big boxing fans too. Just being able to share those hobbies with them is I'm thankful for it. It's the best.
We have all just become so close.
I've changed a lot. I've changed for the better. I don't sweat the small stuff anymore. I'm a very disciplined kid growing up. I'm a black belt in karate. I wanted things a certain way. If that pillow was moved, if I left it a certain way and it was moved, who moved it? That's the way I used to be. It doesn't matter to me anymore. There's other more important things in life to occupy yourself with. But what it did, it created a bond with my family and my kids.
I always knew there was risk in living in Mexico. I just never realized to the extent that it was going to change our family life, our relationships. I mean, everything that we knew just changed overnight.
The Mexican government, along with U.S. law enforcement, picked these guys up pretty quick. There was 8 of them. 1 was presumed dead, so they caught 7 of them. The 7 were extradited from Mexico to the United States and were going to go through trial. They were charged with murder, attempted murder of an internationally protected person, and weapons charges. And I testified to it. These are not drug gangs. These are not street corner gangs. These are highly sophisticated networks. The vehicles they were driving were fleet vehicles. They were checked out. The weapons were checked out. They had fleet cards, just like any corporation in the U.S. here. At least that came to light. And the Zetas cartel was basically dismantled because of this case. Of the 7, 5 of them pled guilty to those charges. The sentence calls for a mandatory life sentence if you plead guilty to these charges. But our government departed from that sentence and sentenced these guys from 35 years down to 12, which is completely unacceptable to myself and the Zapata family. I didn't see these guys give up anything to merit being departed from a life sentence down to these type of years. The 2 that went to trial, the jury comes back with a guilty verdict. They get sentenced to consecutive life sentences. They were all happy. 2 years later, and get a phone call. They were appealing the fact that the murder statute that was used to convict him of the murder of Agent Zapata was invalid because a murder happened extraterritorially, meaning the murder occurred in Mexico, outside of the United States. And the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with them and dismissed the murder charge. So I had to call the Zapata family and let them know that there's no one in prison for the murder of their son. I said, well, we have to do something about this. And so I get on the phone with the congressmen and senators that I knew, that I had met throughout these years. And I said, we got to change this law, and we did. It took 2 years. We passed the Jaime Zapata and Victor Avila Federal Officer and Employee Protection Act, at least to seek justice in the U.S., but not just for murder, but also for assaults on them and their family. There's a big signing ceremony, but we didn't get invited to the signing ceremony, even though the law bears our name. I didn't care about me. I said, why isn't the Zapata family present, standing behind the president? It has their son's name on it. That's the least they could do. And it hurt me. It was, I tell you, bittersweet, because it was a good moment. We passed a law, but they did it to me again. They're finally going to bring back those 2 defendants to re-sentence them. Well, we'll be there. Well, now we have to ask the judge to sentence these defendants back to life. 12 years later, we're still dealing with this. Our supervisors that sent us on that road, I don't believe that they say that I want Victor and Jaime to be killed. I don't believe that for a second. But the negligent decision that was made and ignoring everything around you, and when they didn't know and you pretend to know, it gets people killed, at least in my line of work. There's incompetence and there's other things that got in the way of their decision making.
Was it intentional? No. Was it 100% preventable?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I want to write a book. It took several years, and we got the book done. The full title is Agent Under Fire, A Murder and a Manifesto. Bring awareness. I'm a big advocate for border security and awareness of human trafficking. And by writing the book, it opened me to at least have some speaking engagements and go around the country, start speaking about it. I started being called on to do media hits regarding border security. That's my expertise. And I still do that.
As I've grown up, I've obviously learned more, more details about the case. And whenever I go with my dad all the time, when he goes to speak for these speaking gigs, he gives a presentation about everything that happened. And sometimes I learned a lot that I didn't know before. So even now, almost recently, I've learned so much about that day that I didn't know happened at all.
For me, really, it's, being a supportive parent, a supporting wife. I'll continue to work, but I think most importantly, my most important role is being a mom and being a wife. Everything else is second.
Our goal is not to forget that this ever happened and erase it from our memories. No, the goal is what we're doing now. And success is living.
And success is a complete family.
And it's being with our family.
It definitely crossed my mind that, he could have been the one to have died. And the only reason why he's here is by the grace of God. And it was really nothing short of a miracle.
I think our faith is always in the background.
It's always been part of our lives.
It has to be.
And we have, just like our parents passed it on to us, we have passed it on to our kids. You talk to God and you ask Him for guidance, for help.
God has helped our family. He's the one that really, truly shapes me how I'm going to be.
When there's tragedy, we find a way out of it. And it's all because of Him. And so I think our kids have seen that.
I've learned the difference between praying out of need and want and doing it more so because I'm grateful, or even waking up in the morning and being like, thank you for this new day.
God comes first. I thank Him for waking up and going to bed each night.
We could have been an incomplete family, and we're not. We've grown so much stronger.
God has given us the opportunity to do something. Here it is. What are you doing? I'm giving you the opportunity. You just can't. Well, I'm waiting. No, we have to recognize the ability to do something about that opportunity. I had a lot of survivors guilt after the shooting. Your partner died, but why didn't you die? I didn't know the answer, but the answer was very clear the whole time. It was because God wanted me here. It was because God had a purpose for me. Maybe there is more. Maybe I do have a purpose here to give back, helping other people by sharing my story now. But it's simply as maybe just to see my kids grow up and to help my wife raise my children and to be a family. Simple as that.
Instead of being angry with the trauma or this tragedy that happened, I took it more so as like something to be grateful about, because I do still have my dad here with me.
It's something I'm gonna keep with me for the rest of my life. As a family, that was our lowest point. All we had was each other. Now we have such a great life.
When things seem just so out of control, just knowing that the people that support you and love you are really just your family.
It does get better, and whatever you're thinking or whatever's going through your head, however how miserable you are in your life right now, things will get better with time. I don't even know how else to say thank you. They're the reason why I am who I am today. If it wasn't for their strength, I feel like the situation we were put in could have gone so many different ways. And for us to have this outcome makes me realize how lucky I am to have them as parents. I would want to let them know now that they won't have to worry about me, that I won't let them down in the future, because the chances and the life they've given me, for them to look past all their other troubles in order for me and my sister to have a good life, I think is the most impactful part about their parenting.
When you pray, and I think that when you have faith and when you put your family first, I think you can't go wrong.
Sophia with an F.
Sophia with an F.
Oh, she'll tell you.
F, not PH. The dream is to work at either a marketing department or an in-house public relations department at either a big makeup company or the Dallas Cowboys.
I chose business right now. I'm not totally sure what I'm really gonna do specifically with my life, but yeah, I'm thinking about it.
God is love, and love comes from God. In 1 John, the Bible tells us that God is not only all-loving, but that He actually is love itself. The heart of the Parent Compass television show is to bring the transforming love of God to families everywhere. In every Parent Compass episode, true stories reveal family struggles and how their lives were radically changed by the love of God. Parent Compass, an award-winning television series, is completely funded by people like you. If you have been touched by God and you want to share God's love to others, would you please pass it on? Jesus tells us to go into all the world and to tell about Him. With your donation, you allow us to take this television show into many different nations and in many different languages, free of charge. And a portion of your donation goes to Parent Compass Outreach to feed starving children. Your gift does so much. To make your tax-deductible gift, go to parentcompass.tv/donate. That's parentcompass.tv/donate. And thank you for sending love and hope around the world.